Hello, hello. All righty. We are trying this YouTube live. I'm Colleen. I am here to talk about our third act. Our third act is a long one. I'm 57. I am coming into this third act, and it's a long one. We get like a whole next life. And what I'm realizing coming into this is there are a lot of challenges that we face that maybe previous generations didn't face, or not to the extent that we are now, because we have this really amazing longevity that we get. And with that comes things we need to prepare for, but probably haven't because we weren't told to. So there's that. I'm going to check on my phone. I'm kind of new to YouTube Live, so I want to check things out here. I want to make sure that we are. Hey, Beth, how are you? How are you, Beth? I am here working now. I've decided to work on my YouTube Live because of my Talkity Tick has been bot spammed. So I've had to privatize the account for a while. I don't know what I'm going to do there, but I'm going to spend my time here. But I am checking on my phone also to make sure what it looks like. I'm so glad you found me here. All right, I'm going to go. I'm just making sure. I don't know how this works clearly. Let's see here. Video looks good. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. Looks like I'm live. Okay. So what I want to, you got a notification. Oh, cool. Okay. Because you're a subscriber. Oh, awesome. So what I want to do is start a series on this whole third act, like all of the issues we face in this third act. And the fact of the matter is that there really aren't any models ahead of, there aren't any models that have gone before. We're amongst the first. And so as I am working through certain issues or challenges or whatever, let's hive mind it, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges we face is, what do we want to do in this next act, right? Because we have such a long one, and most of us absolutely need to keep generating income, but there's a lot more to it than that. A lot of us, for example, I was laid off when I was 57 years ago, and so I've had to take matters into my own hands, mostly because when I was laid off with 10,000 people, and that saturated the market, and I knew there wasn't going to be a readily available job. And then of course now pushing 60, ageism is alive and well. There's really no way. And I want the opportunity to work on my own terms and have a life on my own terms. And so we have that's one of our issues, is how do we keep generating income? Because none of us have millions that are going to be generating residual income for us for another 30 or 40 years, right? So we need to be able to live. We need to be able to live. So that's one of the issues. I think this idea of a lot of it's mindset, this idea of how do you move forward. And I've talked about this a lot, of course, on other platforms, but this idea that nobody's coming to save us. And one of the things that we really have to do, or try to do, is adopt this mindset of, you have to give yourself permission to make potentially bad decisions, because that is how you will move forward and make progress. Unfortunately, we never have all the information that we need to make a decision and know that it's 100% correct. We just don't. So we have to give ourselves permission to make potentially bad decisions. And we need to do it in a way that if we do make a decision, we make a move and it turns out not to be a great move, we can pivot without shaming ourselves and getting stuck in the woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? So I think that's incredibly important. I think it's also important to obviously take calculated risks. We can't fully encapsulate ourselves in bubble wrap, protect ourselves and expect to get anywhere. To move forward, you're going to have to try some new things. That's how that's going to work, right? So that's an issue. The mindset, I think another thing that we've talked, that I could talk a lot about and that I have thought a lot about, is this loss of confidence coming into this third act. There's something about as we get older, our confidence levels dip, and we need to get it back in some capacity. And how do you get confident again? How do you be brave again in this third act? And I think it's a lot of inside work. I think it's a lot of inside work and kind of digging in and realizing how resilient you actually are, like how far you have come already, like how many things you've already survived and done, and how much experience you have. And I think a lot of our confidence dip, we need to look at it as like, what is it we're um, not confident about. One thing that comes to mind, of course, is social media. And a lot of us think, oh, I'm too old. I look too old to be on social media or whatever. When you look at that, where that's coming from, that's just like a patriarchy power move trying to keep us down. It's not reality, right? We all belong here. So I think there's that. I think one of the things that we need to do to kind of reestablish our confidence again, of course, is uh, realizing that the only way to confidence is to do the thing, right? So again, calculated risk, go into it with your eyes wide open, but know that you're going to have to be a beginner at some things, and that's okay. That's okay. You're just going to have to be a beginner at some things. So I think that's a big issue. Another one, of course, is that we face, that we've talked a lot about, is this how our communities shift and how there's seemingly a loss of friendship. I think it's more an evolution as people get into very different places and seasons, and also depending on your own circumstances. I'm flying solo. I'm 57, widowed, child free by choice, no sibling left, no family left. So really flying solo. I'm untethered, so to speak, and that presents obviously other issues, just even practical logistical issues. In case like something happens to you, that kind of thing. What do you do? How do you build in some type of a system or safeguard for that? Something I'm thinking a lot about, of course. I'm going to write a document that I call "In Case You Find Me Croaked," what to do, with stuff. Kind of depressing to think about, but it's also kind of gives you like a peace of mind, also a peace of mind around it, because the truth is, none of us live forever. None of us live forever. So I've also been thinking about that document. When you sit down to write a document like that, it's really going to help you prioritize what's super important or not, right? Yeah, Beth says our circles shrink. Our circles shrink a lot. And I think for various reasons. One, some of us approach this third act, and we all approach this third act and aging very differently. And again, we're also have very different circumstances. If you are, flying solo like I am, or like you are, Beth, it's a different experience than if you have a spouse and or a lot of children who are there for you. It's a different circumstance that we need to account for. I also think we age differently mentally, not mental capacity, but mentally. People get like, I want to keep experiencing. Like, to me, this is like an incredibly exciting time. I see a lot of people who are more geared to winding down, and I don't want that. And so that is another way our circles shrink. I think another reason our circles shrink, I would love your feedback on this, is many of us, we start to experience, coming into this third act is a massive transition, whether you experience loss or not. It's a very big transition, and it's often a time, it becomes a time of great reflection and self-development, and working on the mental health and those types of things. And so we tend to get in a position of doing a lot of maybe trauma healing, or certainly just reflection on like what's what, right? And when you start to heal things that have been, broken in your life, trauma or whatever it is, you can't unsee reality. And sometimes not everybody in our circle comes along for that ride or wants to come along, or maybe they're just no longer compatible. Maybe they're just no longer compatible. I had a discussion with a friend this morning who talked about grieving the loss of friendships. The person is still alive, but you get in a really different place. And that's okay. I think that's a natural evolution. But what do you do? What do you do with that? Right? I think there's a lot of people talk about the loneliness epidemic. I think that's something we really need to work on and address and be very intentional about, for sure. Looking at my notes here too. I think one of the biggest, issues for me coming into this third act is just figuring out, who the heck am I now? I'm not some 20 something or 30 something. I'm a 57-year-old woman, and my priorities have shifted. My interests have shifted. My beliefs have shifted. Or maybe they've more solidified. I don't know if shifting is the right word. And I'm a very different person than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'm not fully sure who that person is yet. So I feel like I'm figuring that out. And I feel like that's a very common issue that we face. Who am I now? And what do I want my life to look like? Because we don't have a lot of role models. We don't have a lot of role models before us, right? We just don't. And so I think digging in deep and figuring out who we are now, when you've let go a lot of the rubbish that from before in our lives, I think that's a really interesting time, and can lead to really interesting new things in our lives as well. But figuring out who I am now has been a big one. I think another one is, I think finding motivation again. Like, I applaud you for your introspection. Thank you. I applaud you for yours. I think finding motivation again, I think, is interesting, because we are in a different place. And, the truth is we're closer to the exit than we are the entrance, although it's a long, long third act, right? But finding motivation for things when you've started to peel back maybe a lot of layers that you just need to get rid of, and you see things more for reality. Sometimes it's hard to get motivated. I definitely have a sense of fear. I would say every other day I wake up terrified, because I'm like, what is coming in this third act? What is coming in this third act, right? Because we don't know. It's a great unknown. So there is for me, a very real sense of fear and anxiety around it. When I think about, what am I going to do for the next 30 years? Like, that to me is slightly terrifying to think about. It's also exhilarating because you get that long, but it is very much something to think about. And so, yeah, community definitely helps with motivation, and finding the right community is huge as well. I think finding the right community of people, like-minded people who are kind of, along for the same ride, is always such a great sense of support, which is fantastic, which I think is incredible. But yeah, finding the motivation, when I would say, like, for me, I feel like every other day I wake up terrified. I have the 3 a.m. scaries. Like, oh my, what are we doing? What are we doing for these? It seems like a lot, but then, yeah, community definitely helps with that. Another thing, I think, I'm looking at my notes here, is this whole idea of feeling stuck. I think a lot of people I've talked to, and myself, I've described as like feeling stuck. You don't know which way to turn, so you wind up not doing anything, and then you get that stuck in the rut feeling, and you have to get intentional breaking out of it. You really do. I find small experiments, small adventures, my micro adventures that I'm working on in 2025 definitely help because they just, put me in a different place. And I think when we can do that, when we can put ourselves in a different place and just go experience something new, that is always a good way to kind of get unstuck and try something new. And another issue I think we all face, of course, is the physical and mental health. We really have to become incredibly intentional about staying physically fit. It's no longer about the bikini bod. It's about staying physically fit and being able to stay independent, for as long as humanly possible, maybe to 100, right? And that's something we need to figure out how to build into our lives as well, because I think that's incredibly important. Yeah, learning to manage anxiety, getting really honest about where it comes from. Yes, yes. I think the getting real part is that's one of those onion layers that we're undoing. And, where is the anxiety coming from? And understanding some of the hard lessons, like nobody's coming to save us, so we have to do it ourselves. And understanding that we absolutely can do it ourselves, but we have to get really honest. I would say coming into this third act, it's time to get really honest about who we are, where we are, where we're stuck, why we're stuck, the anxiety. Like there's no time, there's no more reason to keep things, swept under a rug or whatnot. It's time to air it out in the open. Air it out in the open. So that's the story, but that is what I want to be talking about on this channel. I'm calling it Third Act Field Notes because I feel like it's just a whole bunch of trial and error experiments because there's no guidebook. There's no specific guidebook. And I think we're the ones that are going to be making it. And that's what I want to talk about on this channel is how we're going to be tackling this third act and making it really as good as it can be. Because we really do have an incredible opportunity in front of us. And, but I think we're going to need to put our heads together. We're going to need to put our heads together and figure out what some possible options are. There's so many things to think about how to keep generating income. Obviously, money is a big issue. Where will we live? How will we live? What are we going to do with our time? What's going to be meaningful to us? All of these things is, they're all really big questions, right? And so I think if we tackle them maybe one by one. Another thing I was thinking a lot about the other day is we read a lot of, like when you look at midlife and you read the articles and everything, everybody talks about the problems and the issues. This is an issue. This is an issue. This isn't, but it's like, where is the solution? And I think that's where I feel a little scared, but I also feel like, okay, we can figure this out. I think nobody's writing about the solutions because they haven't been created yet. I think that's up to us. And so I feel like I want this channel to be about practical, real ways that we can tackle some of these issues, because I hate it when I'm faced with a challenge or something and I'm like, what is the solution? What do we do? And there's no answer, or the people aren't telling you. And I think it's because we have to figure it out ourselves. Yeah. How can we move forward without regretting settling? Yes. Yeah. And I think maybe one of the keys there, Beth, is understanding what even constitutes settling. Like, I think that comes back to really, getting to know ourselves really deeply again and understanding what it is we really want. Because only then do you know if you're settling or not, right? And also boundaries. Obviously, I think getting to know yourself helps us establish boundaries as well, which of course helps us, keeps us from settling also, because we don't want to live with regret, which I totally understand that, because living with regret, regret will eat you alive. But I think it's only when we figure out, when we get really honest about who we are, what we want, can you even figure out if you're settling or not? And approaching situations more, are you jumping into the situation out of fear, or is this what you really want? Because I think that's something we all face often, is we will uh, make maybe rash decisions out of fear. And I think that's something we need to work on. Yes, insurance should pay for all of us to have therapy. I agree. I agree. Sadly, it's not accessible to everybody. The good news is there is a lot of, there are many resources out there, books and whatnot. And I think just getting in community and talking about things, especially with people who are in different stages, is, we can definitely, support each other in that capacity, because mental health is everything. And as somebody who is, I keep saying flying solo, kind of living alone, and I know you are as well, Beth, is sometimes it's hard, the mental health piece, because there's nobody there to like witness your life. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. So it's easy to uh, insulate or isolate ourselves away, which isn't good for us either. And so staying in community for sure, and being around other people who have, walked the walk, so to speak, or who are walking the walk. And I think that is incredibly helpful. So yes, women understand women so much better. I agree. I think a lot of it is, women have always been encouraged to like self-reflection to a point. Women have always been encouraged to, seek mental health support, whereas men are not. Women are much more open to talking about their feelings and things like that. So I think that is 100% true. I think that's one of the great disparities between men and women, is women do tend to have much more like emotional maturity or emotional regulation that men do not have, because they were never encouraged to have it. Not that I want to get into a discussion about that here, but I think it's very true. But women do understand. And obviously being in community, women understand the woman experience, like as kitschy as that sounds, right? Nobody else can really understand the woman's experience except another woman. So there's that. There's that. So, but thanks for coming along. I'm just popping in. Like I said, I'm kind of at my wit's end about the Talkity Tick app, because I have been literally bot slammed, and so I've had to private the account. It's the only way to keep them from following and botting. So supposedly that might help in a few days. They just go away, they give up. But I think it's the universe also basically saying, hey, you got to diversify. You got to diversify. And I love the idea of coming here on YouTube and being able to have more of a long-term platform and more discussions as well. So yeah, and we in the community are at different places in the business growth, so we can help each other. Yes, and Beth is referring to my Third Act Collective community, which is online business school for women in this third act, for Gen X women and beyond. And it's about so much more than business, obviously. I mean, it always is, right? It's about mindset and all the things as well. And being in very different places and having a supportive community is everything. It's everything. And I promise to uphold that supportive environment for sure, for sure. So, but I'm gonna say goodbye for now, because I don't have a specific plan. I feel like I need to be more organized for YouTube, which would be a good challenge for sure. And I think what I'm going to do is the time I was spending on the Talkity Tick doing lives, I'm going to use that time over here on YouTube and figure out how this all works, because there's a lot going on here. So, but I appreciate you joining me. I think there was a second person here too. I didn't see them comment, but I see two people, so that's good. And I think I will start scheduling these lives, and then I can obviously invite people and let them know with notifications what the topic is going to be, and we'll go from there. So Thanks for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. And if you're catching the replay, you can comment and do all the things you need to do as if it's live. And I will be looking for the comments. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a good one. Cheers.